I first noticed Emily by the way she tried to make herself small. In meetings, she sat with her notebook closed over like a shell, hands folded, eyes tracing the rim of her coffee as if answers might rise like steam. She was good at her work, quietly precise, the kind of person who caught mistakes before they became messes. Yet whenever ideas were being passed around, she nudged hers to the edge of the table and let them slip away. I worked a few desks over and watched this soft, vanishing act day after day, the way someone watches weather, half hoping for sun. Her self-doubt was not loud. It lived in small gestures. The double check that turned into a triple. The email drafted and saved and never sent. The breath she held when a manager looked her way. She had the posture of someone who had learned to walk around a bruise that never quite healed. Once, after a client call ended badly, she stared at the muted screen a long time, as if it were a mirror that told the truth too plainly. When she finally moved, it was with the carefulness of someone lifting something fragile, and I realized that fragile thing was faith in herself. There were reasons beneath this quiet. Years back, a campaign concept she had poured herself into was dismissed in a single shrug. Before that, a group project in college where her teammates joked that she was just the slide maker. Little weights that seemed harmless on their own had gathered over time like pebbles in a pocket, and now she carried them everywhere. When praise came, she sidestepped it. When blame drifted, she caught it with both hands. I could see how tiring it was to be her, to live at the edge of every room. Still, there were flashes. A line she wrote that made a headline feel like a door opening. A color choice in a mood board that turned the whole direction warmer. These were not accidents, they were signals. But signals are easy to miss when you are tuned to doubt. On certain afternoons, the office felt like winter light, thin and honest, and in that light, Emily's talent showed itself, bright as frost. Then the day would move on, and her shoulders would settle again under the familiar weight. I did not know then what would change for her. I only knew that something needed to. Confidence is not a prize granted at the end of a race. It is a muscle hidden under years of quiet. Watching Emily, I felt both tenderness and impatience, the way you do when you see a locked door and know the key is already in the room. Martin had a way of noticing people others overlooked. He had been with the company longer than most of us had been alive. A man who spoke in the slow certainty of someone who had seen mistakes become lessons and failures turn into beginnings. When he spoke to Emily, he didn't fill the air with advice. He asked her opinion, and when she offered a timid answer, he treated it as if it were a rare stone he wanted to examine in the light. One afternoon, after a meeting where Emily had remained silent, Martin stopped by her desk. He leaned against the divider, eyes kind but direct, and told her he had a small project he thought she could lead. It wasn't a grand assignment, just preparing a short brief for a client, but it was hers to shape. Emily hesitated, fingers tracing the edge of her notepad, then nodded. It was the first nudge, and it was deliberate. When the day came to present the brief to Martin, her hands trembled slightly as she laid out the work. The content was solid, better than solid. It carried her quiet precision and care. Martin smiled and suggested she presented herself in the next department meeting. The thought seemed to freeze her. She swallowed, eyes darting toward the floor, but Martin simply said he'd be there in the back of the room. That meeting was a turning point, though Emily didn't know it yet. She stumbled through the first few sentences, her voice almost too soft to carry across the table, but she kept going. At one moment, when she described a marketing angle she had developed, her eyes lifted and met a few nods around the room. That tiny spark of validation reached her like sunlight in a cold place. She finished without falling apart, and in that moment, I think she realized nothing catastrophic had happened. The walls of fear she had built so carefully didn't even creak. Martin kept raising the bar in quiet increments. He encouraged her to handle a client call alone, knowing she would be forced to improvise. She did, haltingly at first, then with more control. He asked her to make a key decision on a design choice without asking for his approval. She chose, and the client loved it. Each challenge was small enough to accept but big enough to stretch her. Slowly, the shape of her posture began to change. I watched as Emily started to take up a little more space at the table, as if the air itself had grown easier to breathe. She didn't yet call it confidence, but she was learning its language one hesitant sentence at a time. The real test came on a gray Thursday morning when the company landed a chance to pitch a major contract. It was the kind of deal that could carry the firm through the year, and Martin, to my surprise, suggested Emily lead the presentation. For a moment, the room went silent, as if everyone was holding their breath. Emily looked at him as though he'd asked her to lift a mountain. In the days that followed, I saw her wrestling with herself. She stayed late, building slides that were more than just visuals. They told a story, but I also saw her pause mid-sentence while rehearsing, her face clouded by the familiar question, "Who am I to do this?" Doubt crept in like a shadow at the edge of every page she prepared. Still, Martin never stepped in to take the work away from her. He knew what she didn't yet, that self-confidence is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep walking with it beside you. The morning of the presentation, Emily wore a deep blue jacket that seemed to steady her somehow. As she stepped to the front of the room, her hands trembled, but her eyes scanned the space with purpose. She began with a voice softer than she wanted, but as she moved through the slides, describing the strategy, the numbers, and the vision, something shifted. She stopped reading from her notes. She spoke as if she belonged there, and she did. Halfway through, a client interrupted with a tough question. I saw the flash of panic in her eyes, but instead of shrinking back, she paused, took a breath, and answered with clarity. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest and thoughtful. That moment earned a small smile from Martin in the back row, and I swear I saw her shoulders rise just a little taller. When it was over, the room held a quiet beat before the applause. The clients shook her hand, impressed not just by the work, but by the way she carried herself. The contract was ours. Later, as the crowd thinned, Martin walked up to her and simply said, "I knew you could." She didn't respond right away, but the way she stood, grounded, steady, said everything. Emily's journey wasn't about a single victory. It was about realizing she no longer had to wait for someone else to confirm her worth. Confidence had been growing inside her all along, watered by each risk she dared to take, and now she was ready for more. Some changes in life happen like storm, loud and sudden. Others arrive quietly, like light finding its way through a crack in the wall. Emily's story is a reminder that the power of self-confidence is not a gift handed to us. It is something we build, piece by piece, each time we choose to act in spite of fear. If you have been waiting for permission to believe in yourself, let this be it. Start small. Speak once. Take one step. You might discover the person you've been searching for has been with you all along. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs it today. Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that move the heart and mind.